Welcome to the story. Don't forget to like, subscribe and support me. In the distant future, interplanetary travel had become as routine as commuting across town. For Max Rider, an interstellar mover, the complexities of this cosmic society were his bread and butter. Working for Galactic Movers, the most prestigious company in the galaxy, Max had handled everything from the most delicate antiques to massive space whales. However, today was going to be one of those days of the kind that left him questioning his career choices. Max stood in the docking bay of his ship, the Nebula Hauler, a sleek, no-nonsense freighter equipped with all the latest moving tech, gravity manipulators, antimatter cranes, and dimensional compressors. His assistant, Kira, a highly advanced hydrone with a penchant for sarcasm, hovered nearby, her optic sensor pulsing a faint blue. "What's first on the docket today, Kira?" Max asked, running his hand through his unkempt hair as he took a sip of his morning stem coffee. Kira's voice crackled through the ship's intercom, her usual snark in full force. "Our first job is a delivery on planet Xylax, anti-gravity chairs. Fancy ones. But I should warn you, the client's review suggests they're a bit particular." Max groaned. He could already see where this was going. Anti-gravity furniture was notorious for having a mind of its own, and Xylax's low gravity wasn't going to help matters. "Piece of cake," Max muttered, more to himself than Kira. He threw on his worn leather jacket, a more sentimental keepsake than practical space attire, and strode toward the cargo bay where the anti-gravity chairs were already packed in their stasis pods. As the bay doors slid open, revealing the glowing capsules, Max could see the sleek, high-tech design of the chairs. They looked harmless enough, but he knew better. The trip to Xylax was uneventful, the smooth hum of the Nebula Hauler's engines lulling Max into a sense of false security. But as soon as they hit the planet's atmosphere and touched down on the client's sprawling estate, everything went wrong. As the ship's cargo ramp descended, Max saw the client waiting impatiently, arms crossed, on the far side of the landing pad. A tall, gaunt figure with an air of aristocratic annoyance, the client wasted no time in making his feelings clear. "I trust you can handle my furniture with care?" he sniffed, his eyes narrowing as he looked over Max's disheveled appearance. Max forced a smile. "Of course. Galactic Movers guarantees it." But as soon as the stasis pods were deactivated, the chairs didn't so much glide out as explode from their containment, zipping around like hyperactive bats on caffeine. Max and Kira were instantly thrown into a chaotic chase around the estate. The chairs hovered just out of reach, bouncing off walls and floating up to the ceiling, ignoring every command from the control device Max carried. "Great," Max muttered under his breath. "This is just what I needed." "Can I suggest you run faster?" Kira piped in, her tone as dry as ever. "Or perhaps you should try reasoning with them, maybe chairs respond to diplomacy." Max ignored her and lunged for one of the chairs, barely missing as it zipped out of reach. The client, watching from the sidelines, was growing increasingly impatient. "I hope you realize I expect a full refund if this takes more than an hour," he called out, his voice dripping with disdain. Max gritted his teeth. No way was he losing out on this paycheck. He chased the last of the chairs up a spiraling staircase, grabbing hold of the railing to hoist himself toward the hovering furniture. Just as he was about to snag it, the chair shot to the side, floating lazily above a luxurious chandelier. Kira, ever unhelpful, chimed in. You could always use the gravity displacers." Max shot her a glare. "Why didn't you say that earlier?" "I like watching you struggle." With a sigh, Max activated the gravity displacers built into his boots. Instantly, he floated into the air, matching the chair's erratic movements until finally, he managed to grab hold of its arm. The chair gave a half-hearted wiggle before it stopped fighting, and Max slowly descended back to the ground, triumphant but out of breath. The client was less than impressed. Finally, he muttered as Max and Kira carefully corralled the rest of the chairs into their designated spots. But with the job complete and the payment received, Max was ready to move on. "What's next, Kira?" Max asked as they lifted off from Silax, wiping the sweat from his brow. "Something much more exciting," Kira said with a hint of enthusiasm. "We're off to planet Droxo. We've got a VIP client waiting for us to deliver an exotic pet, a star beast." Max nearly choked on his stemmed coffee. "A star beast? You've got to be kidding me." "Afraid not," Kira responded, her tone once again dripping with amusement. "And from what I hear, they're very temperamental." The landscape of Droxo was a stark contrast to Xylax's sleek, polished aesthetic. Here, rugged, jagged rocks jutted out from the ground, and the atmosphere was thick with a permanent haze. Max landed the nebula hauler near a sprawling estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. The client, an alien aristocrat with a flair for the dramatic, was waiting for them. Max sized up the alien. Tall, with sleek, pale skin and elongated limbs, the aristocrat oozed arrogance. But what caught Max's eye was the star beast looming in the background. It was enormous, easily the size of the nebula hauler itself, with shimmering scales that seemed to phase in and out of dimensions. "Ah, you've arrived," the alien drawled, his voice as smooth as silk. "I trust you are capable of handling my precious beast?" Max exchanged a glance with Kira. "Absolutely," he said, though inwardly he wasn't so sure. Moving a creature this size was one thing, but one that could phase in and out of dimensions? That was a whole new level of absurdity. The star beast regarded Max with large, glowing eyes, its body rippling as it shifted between physical and ethereal states. Max approached cautiously, holding out a chunk of food as some sort of exotic space meat the client had provided. The beast sniffed the offering and then, in a flash, disappeared. One moment it was there, and the next, it was gone. "Perfect," Max muttered. "It's going to be one of those jobs." For the next several hours, Max and Kira tried every trick they knew to lure the star beast back into their dimension. They played soothing music, projected holographic images of other star beasts, and even tried to coax it with treats. But every time they got close, the creature would blink out of existence again, leaving them to start all over. "This is ridiculous," Max said, wiping sweat from his brow. "We're never going to get it on the ship at this rate." Kira hovered beside him, her tone surprisingly thoughtful. "You know, I think it's scared." Max blinked. "Scared? It's the size of a spaceship." "Size doesn't matter," Kira replied. "It's probably just overwhelmed." "You ever think about, I don't know, bonding with it?" Max stared at her. "Bonding with it?" Kira shrugged, or at least the drone equivalent of a shrug. "You're good with animals. Maybe it just needs a little trust." Max sighed but figured it was worth a shot. He approached the star beast again, this time without any tricks or food. He simply stood there, looking into its glowing eyes. "I get it," Max said softly. "You're in a strange place, and these guys are trying to ship you off to who knows where. But I promise, I'll take care of you." The star beast blinked once, then twice. And then, slowly, it reappeared fully in this dimension, its massive head lowering toward Max. "There we go," Max whispered, reaching out to touch its snout. The beast trembled softly, almost like a purr, and for the first time, it didn't disappear. With the star beast now calm and fully present in this dimension, Max couldn't help but feel a wave of relief. The massive creature was still intimidating, but now it seemed less like a looming threat and more like an overgrown pet that just needed a little reassurance. Kira, floating nearby, made a faint humming sound, which Max had come to recognize as her version of approval. "Well, that was easier than I thought it would be," Max said, patting the side of the star beast's colossal head. The creature leaned into the touch, its glowing eyes half-littered in contentment. "I'm glad you bonded with it," Kira chimed in, her sarcasm notably absent for once. But now comes the fun part, to getting it on the ship. Max winced. Right. Any ideas on how we're going to fit this thing into the nebula hauler? Kira's optic sensor blinked as she calculated. If we expand the cargo bay using the dimensional compressor and adjust the interior gravity stabilizers, it might just work. But what? Max asked, narrowing his eyes. There's a non-zero chance it could cause the interior space to collapse on itself if we don't calibrate it correctly. Max rolled his eyes. Of course, wouldn't be a job without a little life-threatening risk. Still, with no other option, they set to work. Kira activated the dimensional compressor, and the cargo bay began to expand, the walls stretching and warping until the space was large enough to accommodate the star beast. Max carefully guided the creature toward the ramp, coaxing it forward with soft words and the occasional pat. The star beast hesitated at the threshold of the ship, sniffing the air suspiciously. Max held his breath, praying that the creature wouldn't phase out of existence again. After a tense moment, the beast finally stepped inside, its enormous body fitting perfectly within the newly expanded cargo hold. Max let out a long exhale. Well, that's one for the books. With the starbeast secure, they lifted off from Droxo and set course for the client's homeworld. The trip was mercifully uneventful, though Max kept a close eye on the cargo hold, half expecting the beast to disappear at any moment. But the starbeast remained calm, resting quietly as the nebula hauler soared through space. When they finally arrived at the client's estate, a sprawling compound on a lush, tropical planet, the delivery went smoother than Max had anticipated. The alien aristocrat greeted them with a wide, toothy grin, clearly pleased to see his prized pet had arrived in one piece. You've done well, the alien purred, transferring the payment with a flick of his wrist. I'll be sure to recommend your services to my associates. Max gave a tired nod. Appreciate that. As they lifted off again, Kira's voice crackled through the intercom. Well, that was surprisingly low-key. I was expecting more drama. Yeah, me too, Max said, slumping into the pilot's seat. I'm not complaining, though. Don't get too comfortable, Kira added. We've got one more job today. Max groaned. Of course we do. What is it this time? Kira's optic sensor blinked as she accessed the next job request. We're relocating an asteroid. Max sat up straight. Come again? You heard me. We're supposed to move an entire asteroid from one star system to another. Apparently, some eccentric artist has been using it as a giant canvas and doesn't want to leave it behind now that he's moving. Max rubbed his temples. An asteroid. We're moving an asteroid. That's right, Kira said cheerfully. It's about the size of a small moon. Should be fun. Max sighed. Fun isn't exactly the word I'd use, but let's get it over with. The journey to the asteroid's location took several hours, during which Max tried to wrap his head around how they were going to pull off this job. Moving furniture and live animals was one thing, but an entire asteroid? That was a different level of absurdity. Even with the nebula hauler's advanced technology, this was going to be a challenge. When they arrived at the asteroid's coordinates, Max couldn't help but gawk. The asteroid was massive, its surface covered in bizarre sculptures and intricate carvings. The artist had turned the entire thing into a floating gallery of abstract art, with towering structures made of stone and metal jutting out in all directions. Max opened a comm channel to the artist, who appeared on the view screen moments later. The man was an older human with wild gray hair and a manic gleam in his eyes. Ah, you're here! The artist exclaimed, waving his hands excitedly. I've been waiting for someone with the skill to move my masterpiece. You have no idea how important it is that every detail remains intact. Max forced a smile. We'll do our best. No, 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 the artist said, wagging a finger. You must do better than your best. This is a once-in-a-lifetime work. If even a single sculpture is damaged, it will be ruined. Kira, hovering beside Max, made a quiet whirring sound. This guy's gonna be fun. Ignoring Kira's commentary, Max turned back to the view screen. Don't worry, we've got the right equipment for the job. We'll start by stabilizing the asteroid's mass with gravity anchors, then we'll use our spatial compressors to fold the surrounding space so we can transport it without causing any structural damage. The artist nodded vigorously. Yes, good. But be careful. My work is fragile, and the universe is unforgiving. Max ended the calm inside. Let's just get this over with. They deployed the gravity anchors first, securing the asteroid's mass to prevent it from spinning out of control during the move. Then came the tricky part, folding the surrounding space. Max had only done this a handful of times before, and never with something as large and delicate as an asteroid. With Kira's help, Max carefully calibrated the spatial compressors, adjusting the gravity stabilizers to ensure the asteroid would remain intact during the fold. As the compressors hummed to life, the space around the asteroid began to warp, bending in on itself like a sheet of fabric being pulled from all directions. For a moment, everything seemed to be going smoothly. The asteroid shimmered as it passed through the fold, its mass shrinking down to a more manageable size. But just as Max thought they had it under control, the compressors started to overheat. Max, Kira said, her voice tinged with concern. We've got a problem. Max glanced at the control panel, his heart sinking. What now? The compressors are destabilizing. If we don't shut them down, the entire fold could collapse and let's just say it won't be pretty. Max cursed under his breath. They were so close. But if the fold collapsed, not only would the asteroid be destroyed, but they'd be caught in the gravitational shockwave. There was only one option: shut down the compressors, Max ordered. Kira complied, and the spatial fold slowly unraveled, the asteroid returning to its original size. Fortunately, the sculptures appeared to be undamaged, but now they were back to square one. Max ran a hand through his hair. Okay, new plan. We'll have to move it the old-fashioned way. They spent the next several hours manually maneuvering the asteroid, using the ship's tractor beams and gravity manipulators to guide it through space. It was slow, painstaking work, but eventually, they managed to transport the massive rock to its new location. When they finally dropped it off at the artist's new gallery, the eccentric man was over the moon quite literally. He showered Max with praise, declaring that galactic movers would be forever immortalized in his next work of art. Great, Max muttered under his breath as they lifted off again. Just what I've always wanted. Kira's voice crackled through the intercom. Well, that was exhausting, but I've got good news. We're done for the day. Max slumped back in his seat, feeling the weight of the day's absurdity finally catch up to him. Thank the stars. What's our next job? Kira paused for a moment, then said, we've been hired to deliver a mysterious package to a distant planet. The client is paying a lot, but they're keeping the details pretty vague. Max raised an eyebrow. Vague how? They didn't specify what's in the package, just that it's important, and it needs to be delivered without delay. Max sighed. Sounds suspicious. But if the money's good. It's very good, Kira confirmed. Max nodded. All right, let's do it. The package was already waiting for them at a nearby spaceport. It was a small, unassuming box, no bigger than a shoebox, but something about it gave Max an uneasy feeling. Still, a job was a job, and they'd done weirder things. As they set off for the distant planet, Max couldn't shake the sense that there was more to this job than met the eye, and he was right. When they arrived at their destination, Max discovered that the package contained an ancient alien artifact of immense power. The client, a notorious criminal mastermind, planned to use it to alter the very fabric of reality itself. Max found himself caught in a galaxy-wide conspiracy, with the fate of the universe hanging in the balance. But with quick thinking, a little luck, and the trusty tools of his trade, Max managed to sabotage the criminal's plan. In the end, he used the artifact to pack away the villain's ambitions into an alternate dimension, saving the galaxy with nothing more than the ingenuity of a seasoned mover. As they flew away from the chaos, Max leaned back in his seat, a tired but satisfied grin on his face. "Kira," he said, "we just saved the universe with moving equipment." Kira's optic sensor blinked. "You're welcome." Max chuckled. "Let's go home."